My husband said goodbye for his business trip and locked the front gate from the outside. The moment his car disappeared around the corner, my stepson, who was supposedly completely paralyzed, suddenly leaped from his wheelchair and shut off the gas stove. He stared at me, his eyes sharp, and whispered, "Don't scream. Dad is trying to burn us alive." The soft purr of the black sedan's engine in the driveway had been the only thing breaking the morning silence in our exclusive, quiet neighborhood. Ethan, my husband, had looked perfect in a crisp, flawless light blue dress shirt. The scent of his expensive cologne, a mix of sandalwood and citrus, still hung in the air, creating the illusion of security that had defined my days. "Remember what I told you, Clara," he'd said softly, tucking a stray piece of hair behind my ear. His hand was warm, his touch always making me feel like the luckiest woman in the world. "This trip is only 3 days. Don't go anywhere. You know, Leo's condition makes it impossible to take him out, and I won't have any peace of mind if you leave him alone." I nodded obediently. "Of course, honey. I'll stay right here with Leo." "You be safe on the road." Ethan smiled. It was the same smile that had made me fall in love 2 years ago, a rich, handsome, and established widower willing to marry an ordinary girl like me. He glanced toward the patio where Leo sat silently in his expensive wheelchair. My stepson was 10, but his body was as frail as a 7-year-old's. Leo's head was lolled to the left, a thin line of drool trickling onto the small towel tucked into his collar. His gaze was vacant, staring into empty space without expression. The doctors said the brain damage was permanent, a result of the car accident that had claimed his biological mother's life 5 years ago. He was totally paralyzed, unable to speak, and could only respond with random blinks. "Take good care of him. He's the only thing I have left of her," Ethan said, his voice suddenly heavy with the feigned sorrow of a devoted father. "Always, honey. I love Leo like he's my own," I replied sincerely. Ethan kissed my forehead, a long, lingering press, then got into his car. The window rolled down slowly. "Oh, and I'm locking the main gate from the outside, sweetheart. There was a report of a break-in on the next block yesterday. The spare key is in my desk drawer, but the lock is kind of sticky, so it's better not to use it unless it's an emergency. It'll just help me focus on my work." Without waiting for a reply, he drove toward the tall gates that separated our palace from the outside world. I watched him get out for a moment, wrap a thick iron chain through the bars, and then heard the heavy click of a large padlock. The car sped off, vanishing at the turn. Silence. The big house instantly felt suffocating once Ethan was gone. I took a deep breath, trying to shake off the sudden unease creeping into my chest. Maybe it was just temporary separation anxiety. It was normal for a wife to feel lonely when her husband went out of town, wasn't it? I turned to Leo. "Come on, sweetie, let's go inside. It's starting to get hot out here." Leo didn't react, his eyes still fixed on the gate his father had just locked. I pushed his wheelchair into the spacious, air-conditioned living room. The cool marble floor reflected our images, a young stepmother and a boy trapped in his own body. The clock read 10 a.m. My routine began, changing Leo's diaper, feeding him his pureed meal, and reading him a storybook. Ethan was incredibly strict about Leo's schedule. He'd refused to hire a nurse, citing privacy concerns. "I don't want a stranger seeing my son's condition," he had said. Around 11 a.m., while I was reading The Tortoise and the Hare, I caught a strange scent. It was faint, like the smell of rotten eggs carried on the breeze, mixed with the lavender air freshener we always used. I stopped reading. "Leo, did you have an accident?" I asked automatically. I had just changed him an hour ago, but I checked his diaper anyway. It was clean. I got up and walked around the living room. The smell came and went. My gut told me it was coming from the open-plan kitchen connected to the dining area, but when I walked over, everything looked normal. The high-end stovetop was off. The knobs were all in the off position. "It's probably just your imagination, Clara," I mumbled to myself, remembering Ethan's words, often spoken with a light laugh. "You can be so paranoid sometimes, honey. Always forgetting if you turned off the faucet. Always misplacing your keys. It's why I have to take extra care of you." Yes, maybe I was just being paranoid. Maybe it was the smell from the sewer outside, drifting in through a vent. I sat back down on the sofa and continued reading. But 15 minutes later, my head started to feel heavy. A dull throb began in my right temple, spreading behind my eyes. An unnatural wave of drowsiness washed over me. My eyelids felt hot and impossibly heavy. Strange, I thought. I'd gotten plenty of sleep last night. I looked at Leo. The boy was still silent, but something was different. His hands, usually limp on the armrests, were now clenched into tight fists. No, it was probably just a muscle spasm. The doctor said spasticity was common. "Mommy's going to get a drink, sweetie." "I'm thirsty," I said to Leo, my own voice sounding hoarse in my ears. I forced myself to stand. The floor seemed to tilt. My vision swam with black spots. The smell wasn't faint anymore. It was sharp, acrid, stinging my nose and the back of my throat. This was definitely not the sewer. This was gas. Panic began to crawl up my spine as I staggered towards the kitchen. I had to check the main gas line valve under the stove. My heart hammered against my ribs, racing against the growing dizziness. My hands trembled as I reached for the cabinet handle. The moment I opened the door, a soft hissing sound filled my ears. Sssss. The smell of gas billowed out, hitting me in the face. The connection to the gas line looked crooked, as if it hadn't been properly tightened or had been deliberately loosened. "Oh my God," I choked out. I tried to reach for the valve to turn it, to do anything to stop the deadly hiss, but my head was spinning violently. My body went limp, my legs turning to jelly. I slumped to the cold kitchen floor. The oxygen in my lungs felt like it was vanishing. Blackness crept in at the edges of my vision. In the fading moments of consciousness, I remembered Leo. Leo was still in the living room. I had to save Leo. But I couldn't even move a finger. I lay there helpless, waiting for death to come in the form of an explosion or suffocation. Just before my eyes closed completely, I heard the squeak of wheelchair tires. Then, footsteps. Not shuffling steps, but firm, quick, and steady steps. A shadow fell over me. Did Ethan come back? I forced my eyelids open a crack. The figure bent over the gas line. A hand moved swiftly, twisting the valve, shutting it off with a sharp turn. The hissing stopped. The figure turned and looked down at me. It was Leo. The boy who was supposed to be completely paralyzed was now standing over me, looking at me with eyes that were cold, sharp, and intelligent. There was no drool, no lolling neck. His lips moved, whispering words that froze my blood colder than the marble floor I was lying on. "Hold your breath, Mom. Dad didn't forget. He wants us dead today." Fresh air flooded my lungs, so harsh it sent me into a violent coughing fit that brought tears to my eyes. My chest ached as if it had been struck from the inside with a sledgehammer, but the pain was a sign I was still alive. I struggled to prop myself up on my trembling elbows. The scene before me was surreal. The large windows in the living room and kitchen were now wide open. A strong breeze blew through, clearing out the deadly gas that had nearly killed me minutes ago. And there he stood. The small boy I had carried to the bathroom and spoon-fed for 2 years was now standing on a dining chair. His small but nimble hands were turning a ceiling fan to its highest speed to circulate the air faster. His movements were deft, calculated, nothing like a child with motor neuron damage. "Leo?" I called out, my voice a raw whisper. He turned. The vacant stare and slack jaw I saw every day were gone. His face was serious, his brow furrowed as he looked at me with a maturity that was terrifying for a boy his age. He jumped down from the chair, landing perfectly, and walked briskly to the refrigerator. He grabbed a bottle of cold water, twisted off the cap, and knelt beside me. "Drink, Mom. Small sips. Don't chug it or you'll throw up," he commanded. His voice was firm, flat, and perfectly articulated. There was no slurring, no drooling. My hand shook as I took the bottle. I stared at him as if he were a ghost. Was the gas making me hallucinate? Was I already dead? And this was some strange afterlife? You can walk?" I stammered after a sip of water. "Since when? How?" Leo didn't answer immediately. He stood up, walked to the stove, and came back holding the gas line connector he had fixed. "Focus on this first, Mom. Your questions about my legs can wait. Our lives can't," he said coldly. He held the connector right in front of my face. "Look here." His small finger pointed to the metal clamp. "This clamp isn't loose because it's old. See the fresh scratches on the bolt? It was deliberately loosened with a flathead screwdriver, and the rubber safety seal inside is gone." I squinted, still dizzy, trying to process his words. "You mean your father forgot to install it correctly?" Leo snorted, a cynical smile I'd never seen on his innocent face now clearly etched there. Dad never forgets anything, Mom. He's a perfectionist architect. He throws a fit if a single book on his shelf is crooked. Does it make sense that he'd be forgetful about something that involves the lives of his wife and son? My heart pounded, no longer from the gas, but from a cold fear crawling up my spine. So he did it on purpose, I whispered. The gas leak. The gate padlocked from the outside. All the windows locked tight before he left. And he forbade you from leaving the house for safety reasons. Leo laid out the facts like a seasoned detective. If I were truly paralyzed like he thinks, and you passed out from the gas, one tiny spark from the refrigerator's automatic cycle or a light switch, and this house would have exploded. Boom! Leo stared at me intently. Everyone would think it was a tragic accident, a negligent housewife who forgot to turn off the stove. Dad would come home, cry for the news cameras, and then cash in your life insurance policy, the one he just upgraded last month. I shook my head violently, tears starting to flow. Denial was my last defense. No, that's impossible. Ethan loves me, Leo. He's a good husband. He took care of you all by himself for years before he met me. He didn't take care of me, Mom. Leo cut in sharply, his voice trembling with suppressed rage. He imprisoned me. Leo took a step back, looking down at his own feet. I was never paralyzed from that accident. My legs were broken, yes, but they healed completely a year after my real mother died. I realized then that if I looked healthy, if I looked smart, I would end up just like her. What do you mean? I whispered in horror. My mother didn't die in a car accident, Mom. The car's brakes failed because the line was cut. I was in the back seat. I saw Dad fiddling under the car before we left. I survived. She didn't. Leo took a deep breath. From that day on, I decided to play dead. I became a harmless, disabled puppet. Because a murderer doesn't feel threatened by a vegetable, right? I covered my mouth, my body shaking uncontrollably. The story was too monstrous to be true, but the puzzle pieces in my mind began to click into place. Ethan's sometimes overprotective behavior, his insistence that I not get a job, the subtle way he had isolated me from my friends. Suddenly, the ringing of a phone shattered the tension between us. It was my cell, lying on the coffee table. Leo's head whipped towards it. The screen was lit up, displaying a contact name that now felt like the Grim Reaper's. My husband. Leo's face went pale, but his eyes blazed with alertness. In a flash, he actually ran to his wheelchair. He jumped in, slumped his back, tilted his head to the left, and let his jaw hang slack. In seconds, the cold, genius child was gone. Leo was once again a helpless, paralyzed boy. "Answer it, Mom!" Leo hissed, his lips barely moving. The sound came from between his clenched teeth, incredibly quiet, yet full of command. "Answer it now. Don't cry. Don't shake. If he suspects for a second that we're okay, he'll turn around and finish us with his own hands." The phone continued to ring, demanding an answer. My hand reached for the sleek device. The screen flashed, counting down the seconds of my life. I looked at Leo. He blinked once. Our new secret code. I pressed the green icon, held the cold device to my ear, and tried to swallow the sob caught in my throat. "Hello, sweetheart." Ethan's baritone voice came through the line, so warm, so reassuring, and so deadly. "Is everything okay at home? You sound a little out of breath." My heart stopped at Ethan's question. His voice on the other end was so casual, but now, every inflection sounded like a blade measuring my neck. Leo was still in his wheelchair, head tilted, but his slightly open left eye stared at me sharply, sending a warning signal. "Don't mess this up." I just ran from the bathroom, honey," I lied, my brain scrambling for a plausible reason. "I thought I heard a glass break. Turns out the neighbor's cat got in through the kitchen window." A short silence on the other end. I could hear Ethan's held breath. Did he believe me? "A cat?" he asked, his tone dropping slightly. It sounded disappointed, but I thought I locked all the windows. How could a cat get in? "Did you open a window, Clara?" It was a trap. If I said I opened the window, he'd know the gas had aired out. If I said it was closed, he'd wonder why I wasn't dead. "The latch must have been loose, honey. The wind probably blew it open a little," I answered quickly, trying to sound like the naive Clara he knew. "But I closed it again. Don't worry." "Oh, I see," he replied slowly. "Well, you should get some rest. And don't forget to check the stove. Okay?" I have a bad feeling. Maybe a leak or something. You know your sense of smell isn't great when you have allergies. Gaslighting. He was planting his alibi. If the police found my charred remains, he would testify that he had warned me over the phone, but I had been the negligent one. Yes, honey, everything's fine. You just focus on your work, I said, my lips trembling as I held back a wave of nausea. I love you, Clara. Love you too, Ethan. The call disconnected. The phone slipped from my grasp, thudding onto the thick carpet. My legs gave out. I sank to the floor, hugged my knees, and my tears finally broke free, silent and scalding. Stop crying, Mom. Leo's firm voice cut through my despair. He straightened his head, wiping the fake drool from his chin with the back of his hand. He wheeled himself closer and patted my shoulder gently. He's disappointed. You're still alive, Leo stated flatly. That tone in his voice was the sound of a man whose plan just failed. I angrily shrugged his hand off my shoulder. The shock had made my emotions volatile. Stop it, Leo! Don't talk about your father like that! Maybe the connector was just old. Maybe you misunderstood what happened to your mother. Ethan is a gentleman, Leo. He rescued me from a poor family. He gave me everything. He rescued you because you're an orphan with no close relatives who would ask questions if you died suddenly, Leo snapped. The little boy's voice boomed in the large living room, silencing my sobs. Leo looked at me with an expression of profound exhaustion. Why do you think he discouraged you from making friends with the neighbors? Why didn't he like you joining that book club? Why did he fire all the house staff a month before he married you? I was speechless. All those questions had answers Ethan had always given me. I want us to have our privacy, sweetheart. I just want to enjoy our time together. At the time, it sounded romantic. Now, it sounded like a prison sentence. You're still in denial. Leo reached into the pocket of his shorts, a pocket I thought only held a handkerchief, and pulled out a tiny black object. It was a mini digital voice recorder. All this time, while Dad thought I was just a useless lump in a wheelchair, he felt free to make any phone call he wanted in front of me, Leo said, pressing the play button. Ethan's voice, clear as day, came from the small device. It seemed to have been recorded a few days ago. Yes, Mr. Henderson, the insurance policy is active. Good. A total of $5 million for a death resulting from a domestic accident. Okay, I'll make sure everything is taken care of next week. I need that cash, and I need it fast, to cover my Vegas debts. My wife? Ah, she's easy. She's a gullible fool. My world collapsed. The ceiling of this luxurious house felt like it was crashing down on me. The word fool, spoken with such a dismissive, condescending tone, followed by the same light chuckle I heard when we watched comedies on TV. The husband I adored, the man I saw as my savior, was nothing but a monster drowning in gambling debt. I felt sick. My stomach churned, not from the lingering gas, but from the brutal reality that had just slammed into me. He called me a fool, I whispered, numb. He's wrong, Leo cut in quickly. He grabbed my hand, his small hand surprisingly rough, probably from years of secretly practicing with his wheelchair. You're not a fool, Mom. You're just too good. And evil people always take advantage of good people. Leo glanced at the wall clock. We have a new problem. He's suspicious about why you weren't poisoned. He's definitely going to be watching us. Watching how? He's on the highway, I asked, still trying to piece my sanity back together. Leo pointed to a corner of the room, just above a tall crystal display cabinet. Nestled among a lush arrangement of artificial flowers was a tiny gleaming dot reflecting the light. A spy camera, Leo hissed. He installed it last week, said it was a motion sensor for the alarm. He lied. It's a camera connected directly to his phone. My blood ran cold. I instinctively started to turn my head toward it. Don't look at it! Leo exclaimed under his breath. He pulled my hand to keep me looking down. Listen, Mom. He's probably opening the app right now to see why you were still able to answer the phone. If he sees me standing like this, or if he sees you looking perfectly fine, he'll know his plan failed completely. Then what do we do? I asked, panicking. We give him a show. Leo's eyes gleamed with a cunning light. We have to make him believe that you're dying a slow, painful death. Make him feel like he's won, so he doesn't turn back right now. Before I could reply, my phone buzzed again, a text message notification. I glanced at the screen, trembling, a message from my husband. Honey, I checked the camera feed, but the living room is dark. Is the power out? Try turning on a lamp. I want to check on Leo. Leo read the message over my shoulder. His face tensed. He's testing us, Leo whispered. The power isn't out. He turned off the camera's infrared remotely to make the screen dark, trying to bait you into moving in front of it. Leo looked up at me. Then, with a swift movement, he tore the collar of his own shirt slightly, making it look disheveled. Mom, slap me, he ordered. What? Slap me. Then throw yourself onto the sofa. Act like you're delirious and emotionally unstable from the gas poisoning. Yell at me, right in front of that camera. Now. My hand hovered in the air, shaking under the moral weight that threatened to crush my bones. In front of me, Leo puffed out his chest. His eyes met mine, a mixture of challenge and desperate pleading. Do it, Mom! Now or we die! He hissed. I closed my eyes, bit my lip until I tasted blood, and swung my hand. Crack. The sound of the slap echoed in the silent room. My palm stung, but my heart ached far more. Leo's head snapped to the side, his cheek instantly turning red. In a split second, Leo's expression transformed. His mouth opened wide, and a dissonant, heartbreaking wail escaped his throat. Fake tears, or maybe real ones from the sting, streamed down his face. He was the pitiful, disabled child once more. I immediately fell into my role. I used the real dizziness from the gas as my motivation. I screamed hysterically, unleashing all my fear and rage. Be quiet, Leo! Quiet! I yelled, clutching my head as I stumbled in front of the display cabinet where the damned camera was hidden. My head hurts so much. It's because of you. Because of this smell, I'm going crazy. I threw myself onto the long sofa, writhing and punching the cushions. Ethan! Ethan! Help me! My head is going to explode! I rambled, making sure my voice was loud enough for the camera's microphone to pick up. A few agonizing seconds passed. My phone, lying on the table, buzzed. With a theatrical gasp, I reached for it. A new message from my husband. Sweetheart, what's wrong? I see you on the camera, you're screaming. Are you sick? If you feel dizzy, just try to sleep on the sofa. Don't be angry with Leo. You're scaring him. And don't open the door, okay? It's not safe. I'll be home as soon as I can. Stuck in traffic. I read the message with trembling hands. He saw it. He was watching the show, and most terrifyingly, he told me to just sleep and don't open the door. A subtle instruction to keep inhaling any residual poison until I died in my sleep. Leo, still sobbing in his wheelchair, slowly quieted down when he saw me put the phone down. He gave me a coded look, glancing to the left. I followed his eyes. He was pointing toward the hallway that led to the utility kitchen and the unused maid's bathroom. Out of sight. Leo mouthed silently. Safe. I gave a slight nod. Still acting dizzy, I stood up. I'm going to be sick, I groaned loudly. Get out of my way, Leo! I half ran towards the back corridor, out of the camera's line of sight. The moment I reached the door of the small, damp maid's bathroom, Leo had already wheeled himself there with lightning speed. We both slipped inside, and Leo immediately slid the bolt lock. In the tiny 6x6-foot room that smelled of mothballs, our masks finally fell away. I slid to the floor beside the dry bathtub, sobbing uncontrollably, but silently. I'm so sorry, Leo. I'm so sorry I slapped you. Leo ignored my apology. He was busy pulling a thin tablet from a hidden compartment he'd fashioned behind the backrest of his wheelchair. His small fingers flew across the screen. Save your tears, Mom, he said coldly, though his cheek was still red from my hand. You'll need them later. Right now, look at this. Leo shoved the tablet in my face. I've been hacking his cloud and syncing his chats for the past month. I knew he was planning something, but I could never prove it until today. He made a fatal mistake by not disabling the data sync on this old tablet. The screen displayed a familiar green messaging app. It wasn't a conversation with a client or a colleague. It was an intense chat with a contact named Jessica, interior design. My eyes scanned the lines of text, and every word hit my chest harder than a sledgehammer. Ethan, the gas line is loose. The fool and the idiot are locked inside. I'm on my way out now, pretending to leave for the business trip. Sent 2 hours ago. Jessica. Are you sure it's safe, baby? What if it fails? I don't want to wait any longer to have you all to myself. I already booked our tickets to Paris for next week. Ethan, relax, sweetheart. Clara is naive. She won't suspect a thing. Even if she doesn't die from the gas, she'll pass out and accidentally knock over that aromatherapy candle I lit on the end table. The house will go up in smoke. We cash the insurance, get married in Europe. Goodbye, poverty. Jessica, haha, you're so bad, but I love it. Love you, my future rich husband. Ethan, love you more. Just be patient. We should be getting a news alert about a house fire in an hour or so. Below the conversation was a photo Jessica had just sent, a picture of a pregnancy test with 2 pink lines. Jessica, a little bonus for you. Junior is on the way. The world went dark. My love, my devotion for 2 years, my sincerity in caring for his son, all of it repaid with a murder plot so vile. He didn't just want to kill me for money, he wanted to kill me to replace me with another woman and their new child. And he called Leo, his own son, the idiot. The tightness in my chest was no longer sadness. It transformed into something else, something hot, burning, and sharp. I stared at the screen, searing every despicable word into my memory. My tears stopped. My ragged breathing became calm, but heavy and deep. "Mom?" Leo called softly, perhaps frightened by my sudden, rigid expression. I turned to look at my stepson. The gentle, compliant Clara was gone. The timid, obedient Clara was gone. "Leo," my voice was low, vibrating not with fear, but with a newly born vengeance. "Can this tablet record our faces right now?" Leo nodded, confused. "Yes. Why?" "Record me," I commanded. I wiped the last tears from my cheeks. "We are not dying today, and we are not running." I clenched my fists until my nails dug into my palms. "He wants to see this house burn? Fine. We'll give him a fire he'll never forget." Stepping out of that small bathroom felt like walking back onto a battlefield without armor. The smell of gas had mostly dissipated, but the foul stench of betrayal now filled every corner of the house. "Remember, Mom," Leo whispered, tugging on my sleeve. "You're not strong, Clara. You're gas-poisoned, dizzy, semi-conscious Clara. Let your eyes glaze over. Don't focus on the camera." I nodded weakly. My legs carried me unsteadily to the living room sofa, our stage. I messed up my hair, letting a few strands stick to my clammy forehead. My face was already pale without any effort. Knowing my husband wanted me dead had drained the blood from my cheeks. I had just collapsed onto the sofa when the phone on the table vibrated. A special ringtone that once made my heart flutter now sounded like a death siren. A video call from my husband. "He's calling," I hissed in panic. "Answer," Leo commanded. He quickly positioned his wheelchair slightly behind me, returning to his broken doll mode. My hand trembled as I pressed the green camera icon. Ethan's face appeared on the 6-inch screen. He was in his car, the highway blurring past behind him. His face, my God, that face was still so handsome, adorned with a look of concern so convincing that if I hadn't read his monstrous texts, I would have melted at his worried expression. "Oh my God, sweetheart, you look so pale," he exclaimed as soon as he saw me. His voice was panicked, but my newly opened eyes caught the flicker of anticipation in his. I swallowed the bitter taste in my mouth. "Ethan," I whimpered, letting my voice crack. "I don't feel good. I'm so dizzy. My stomach feels sick." "What's wrong? Do you still smell the gas?" he asked quickly. "The smell. It's just spinning in my head," I answered softly, closing my eyes as if I couldn't bear to look at the screen. "I just want to sleep. I feel so sleepy." The corner of Ethan's mouth twitched. A tiny smile, almost imperceptible, but I saw it. He was happy. He thought sleepy meant hypoxia, the fatal lack of oxygen before death. "Okay, sweetheart, don't force yourself to stay up," he cooed, his voice as smooth as silk. "Maybe you just need a long rest. Just sleep there on the sofa, okay? Don't go anywhere. You'll feel better when you wake up." A long rest. He was lulling me to my eternal sleep. But Leo. I angled the phone slightly, showing Leo slumped over, his eyes wide and vacant, his mouth slightly agape. "Leo hasn't had his lunch." "Shh. It's okay," Ethan cut in, his voice slightly impatient. "Leo is strong. He can fast for a little while. You're the priority right now. You sleep, honey. For me, just rest." A tear rolled down my cheek. It wasn't an act, it was a tear of anguish for the man who had promised to love me, till death do us part, now coaxing me towards that very end for his pregnant mistress. "Okay, Ethan, I'll sleep," I whispered in surrender. "Good girl. I love you." "Sweet dreams, Clara," he said, his final farewell. The call ended. The moment the screen went dark, my defenses crumbled. I threw the phone onto a cushion and ran to the kitchen sink, vomiting up nothing but bitter bile. My body shook violently. I felt disgusted. Filthy, to have ever been touched by the hands that planned this. A dark depression enveloped me. I was alone in this big house, trapped with a small child against a monster who held all the keys. What if our plan failed? What if he had a backup plan? What if tonight was my last night on Earth? I slid to the kitchen floor, hugging my knees, sobs of despair starting to escape my throat. "Stop feeling sorry for yourself." Leo's voice was back. This time, it wasn't commanding, just cold and pragmatic. His wheelchair squeaked as he approached. "You can cry later? When he's rotting in a prison cell? Now, get up." I looked up at him with swollen eyes. "I'm scared, Leo. He's my husband. How could he do this?" "Because he's a monster," Leo answered simply. He was already busy with his tablet, his small fingers swiping quickly across the screen. "I'm tracking his car's GPS through the built-in navigation system. He should be heading farther out on the interstate by now." I struggled to my feet, wiping my mouth with a paper towel. He believed me, right? He told me to sleep." Suddenly, Leo's fingers froze on the screen. His eyes widened, his calm expression replaced by one of tense, pale shock. "Leo? What is it?" I asked, sensing the sudden shift in the room's atmosphere. Leo swallowed hard. He held up the tablet, showing me a digital map with a single blinking red dot. "Mom." His voice trembled for the first time. "This dot, it's Dad's car." I squinted. "So? He's far away, right?" "No." Leo shook his head slowly, his eyes filled with horror. "He just took the nearest exit, and now, he's turning around. He's coming back here." My heart skipped a beat. "He knows," Leo whispered. "Something was wrong with your acting, or maybe he noticed the back window was slightly ajar in the video. He's not on a business trip anymore." Leo looked at the wall clock, then at me. "He'll be here in 20 minutes. And when he gets home and finds us alive with no fire, he won't use gas again. He'll finish the job himself." 20 minutes! I choked out. Adrenaline surged through my veins. "We have to run, Leo. We have to get out of here now. We can climb the back fence, scream for security." "It's useless, Mom," Leo snapped, pulling me back from my blind panic. "The nearest security post is half a mile away. The back fence is 10 feet high with barbed wire. And the front gate, you forgot." He chained it shut. "We're trapped." I ran to the front window, peeking through the blinds. The iron chain was coiled around the heavy black gate like a snake. We were mice in a trap, waiting for the predator to return. "So we just give up and let him kill us?" I asked desperately, turning to face Leo. Leo shook his head, his young face hardening. His expression was no longer that of a child, but a cornered soldier. "No, we don't run. We welcome him." Leo wheeled himself quickly towards the media console under the TV. "Help me move this, Mom. Fast." I didn't ask questions. With what little strength I had left, I helped him push the heavy wooden cabinet. Behind it, on the wall, was a low ventilation grate with loose bars. "Pull it off!" Leo commanded. I yanked the grate free. Tucked inside was an old fishing tackle box belonging to Ethan, one he'd claimed was lost years ago. Leo pulled it out. "A little surprise for him," Leo muttered, unlatching it. My eyes widened at the contents. There were no hooks or fishing line. Inside was an assortment of items Leo had secretly collected. A small hammer, a rusty box cutter, a bottle of homemade pepper spray made from chili extract, and, most shocking of all, a black handheld stun gun. "Where did you get this?" I whispered in horror. "It's Dad's. He bought it for self-defense and kept it in the car. I stole it 6 months ago when he was drunk. He thinks he lost it at the car wash," Leo explained quickly, checking the device. A terrifying BZZZT of blue electricity crackled between the prongs. "Batteries full." Leo handed the stun gun to me. "Take this, Mom. This is your only chance. When he gets close, don't hesitate. Press it against his neck. Hold the button until he drops." I held the cold object, my hand shaking. The thought of hurting my own husband, the man who used to hold me every night, made my stomach churn. But the image of his text messages, his plan to burn us alive, erased my hesitation. "Now, listen to the plan," Leo said, his eyes sharp. "We can't attack him in the living room. The camera is there. He'll check the feed from his car before he even comes inside to see where we are. So, we hide in the blind spot. The maid's bathroom is too small. We'll hide in the pantry, under the stairs. It's dark, cramped, and most importantly, out of the camera's line of sight. But what if he doesn't go there?" "He will." Leo's smile was grim and cunning. "Because I'm going to leave my wheelchair right in front of the pantry door. He'll think I fell out and crawled in there, or that you dragged me in there to hide." The idea was both brilliant and insane. We moved fast, like a special ops team. We tidied the living room just enough to look normal. Leo hopped out of his wheelchair. Together, we pushed the empty chair until it tipped over in front of the slightly ajar pantry door, creating the illusion of a struggle. Then, Leo and I slipped into the darkness of the pantry. We crouched behind the kitchen island, among stacks of canned goods. My breath came in ragged gasps. Leo grabbed my hand, his palm cold and clammy. 5 minutes passed in silence. 10 minutes. Only the ticking of the wall clock, sounding like a time bomb. 15 minutes. We heard the sound of tires crunching on the gravel driveway. My heart felt like it would leap out of my throat. He was here. The car engine died. A moment of silence, then the clanking of metal, the sound of the gate chain being unlocked. He didn't honk. He didn't call my name. He came in silence, like a thief in his own home. The front door opened slowly, footsteps on the marble floor. Tap, tap, tap. The sound of his expensive dress shoes, which I used to love hearing when he came home from work, now sounded like the steps of an executioner. "Clara?" he called out, his voice flat and cold. There was none of the concern from the phone call. No answer. The house was dead quiet. "Leo?" he called again. He stepped further inside. From a narrow gap under the island, I could see the shadow of his legs moving towards the living room. He paused, probably looking around, checking for any signs of life. "Damn it," he muttered. "The smell is gone." He realized the windows had been opened. His shadow moved again. He walked towards the overturned wheelchair in front of our hiding spot. He stopped right in front of the pantry door. We were separated by a thin, half-open door and the kitchen island. I gripped the stun gun with all my might, cold sweat trickling down my temples. "Playing hide-and-seek, are we?" He chuckled, a dry, emotionless sound. "Come on out, Clara. I know you're not dead yet. Not enough gas, was it?" Suddenly, a heavy metal object clattered onto the marble floor. Clang! I peeked out. In his right hand, Ethan wasn't holding his briefcase. He was holding a long, gleaming tire iron. He didn't come to help. He came to make sure there were no witnesses left. Ethan stepped forward, kicking Leo's wheelchair aside. It crashed against the wall. "Useless, crippled brat," he snarled as he entered the kitchen area. "Come on out. Daddy's got some permanent sleeping pills for you." He was 2 steps away from us now, his back to us as he checked the cabinets across the room. Leo jabbed me hard in the ribs. "Now." I took a deep breath, gathering every last ounce of courage of a betrayed wife and a protective mother. I rose from my hiding spot, the stun gun in my right hand crackling to life with a sharp BZZZT. "I'm right here, Ethan," I yelled. Ethan spun around, his eyes wide with shock. The tire iron in his hand came up, but before he could swing it, I lunged forward. A loud, terrifying BZZZT filled the small kitchen, followed by a scream of agony that wasn't mine. The stun gun was pressed firmly against the side of Ethan's neck. The powerful man's body convulsed violently. His eyes rolled back in his head, the veins in his neck bulged, and the tire iron he was holding clattered loudly to the floor. Ethan collapsed like a felled tree, his body hitting the floor with a sickening thud. I stumbled back, breathing heavily, my hand shaking so much I almost dropped the stun gun. I stared at my husband's body, groaning on the floor, his limbs still twitching from the electrical current. "I'm sorry, honey," I whispered instinctively. The old habit of the stupid, submissive wife still lingered. I felt guilty for hurting him. "Don't be sorry. Do it again, Mom. Stun him until he's completely out," Leo screamed from behind me. Leo's shout snapped me back to reality, but I was a second too late. As I moved to deliver another jolt, Ethan's large hand shot out with lightning speed and clamped around my ankle. His grip was like a steel vice. "You bitch," he growled, his voice a horrifying rasp. Ethan yanked my leg. I lost my balance and fell backward, the back of my head cracking against the hard tile floor. My vision exploded with stars. The stun gun flew from my hand, skittering far out of reach. Ethan struggled to get up, his body still staggering, his face contorted with rage. His eyes burned with pure, murderous intent as he crawled towards me, his hand reaching for my throat. "You die now, Clara." I squeezed my eyes shut, raising my hands to fend off the inevitable attack. Piff! Suddenly, there was the sound of a liquid spray, followed instantly by a piercing, spicy odor. "Triple R! My eyes!" Ethan shrieked, releasing my leg and rolling on the floor, clawing at his face. Leo stood there, holding the repurposed perfume bottle filled with his chili concoction. He was repeatedly pumping the sprayer directly into his father's face without mercy. "Run, Mom, upstairs, now!" Leo commanded. I wasted no time. Adrenaline overrode the pain in my head. I scrambled to my feet, grabbed Leo's small hand, and we sprinted out of the kitchen. We flew up the grand, winding staircase. Behind us, we could hear Ethan roaring like a wounded beast, crashing into tables and chairs as he stumbled around, temporarily blinded. "I'll kill you! I'll chop you both into pieces!" His threats echoed through the house. We reached the second floor and ran straight into the master bedroom, the room that had been a silent witness to my fake happiness. I slammed the heavy oak door and turned the double locks. Not satisfied, I dragged the heavy vanity table to barricade it. We both stood there in the silent room, our breathing harsh and ragged. I slid to the floor, leaning against the bedpost, my body shaking uncontrollably. The fear was back, more terrifying than before. We were trapped. The windows in this room had permanent iron security bars. The only way out was the door we had just locked, and on the other side of that door was a monster. "We're going to die, Leo. We're going to die," I rambled, hugging my knees. "He's going to break down the door. He's going to kill us slowly." Leo limped towards me, his small feet scraped from running barefoot. He wasn't crying. He looked at me with a flat expression. "Are you giving up?" he asked coldly. "We don't have any more weapons. The stun gun is downstairs," I sobbed. Leo took a deep breath and did something that stunned me. He slapped my cheek. It wasn't hard, but it was enough to shock me out of my hysterics. "Look at me, Mom," Leo snapped. "Look at me." I looked into the 10-year-old's eyes, eyes that held years of vengeance for his mother's death. "The whimpering Clara you were needs to be dead and gone. If you're still that weak woman hoping for pity, then we both will die tonight. Dad won't stop. He saw my legs. He knows you know his plan. There's no going back." Leo pointed at the barricaded door. "That is not your husband anymore. That is a stranger who wants your money. That is the man who called you a gullible fool to his mistress. Are you going to let him be right? Are you going to let him burn you like trash?" His words ignited something inside me. The cold fear slowly turned into a hot, blazing fire. The image of the text messages between Ethan and Jessica flashed in my mind. Clara is naive. She's a gullible fool. I slowly stood up, wiping my tears away with the back of my hand, a final, harsh gesture. I walked to the large mirror on the wardrobe. I saw my reflection. Messy hair, a bruise forming on my forehead, my shirt torn at the shoulder. But my eyes were no longer soft. I was not the orphan Clara, desperate for affection. I was not the obedient wife who could be fooled with sweet words and false promises. I turned to face Leo. "You're right. The old Clara died from a gas leak." I walked to the small wall safe hidden behind a landscape painting. "Leo, do you remember the code? Your father's wedding anniversary with your real mother?" I asked flatly. Leo nodded, confused. "Yeah, 1508. Why?" "Ethan is sentimental about the past. Even though he's evil, he never changed this password because he's too lazy to memorize a new one," I said, dialing the combination. Beep, 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 beep. Click. The safe door swung open. Inside lay an old revolver, a relic from Ethan's antique collecting grandfather, along with a box of bullets. Ethan kept it for emergencies but was terrified to use it himself. I picked up the cold, heavy piece of metal. My hands were steady now. "He wants a war," I muttered, checking the cylinder. It was fully loaded. We'll give him one. But just as I felt a sliver of power holding the weapon, I smelled something familiar. Smoke. Not cigarette smoke, but the smell of burning wood and fabric. Leo ran to the crack under the door. Thin wisps of gray smoke were starting to seep in. "Mom," Leo's voice was choked. "He's not breaking down the door. He's setting the stairs on fire. He's burning the first floor." We heard Ethan's voice from downstairs, a crazed laugh punctuated by coughing. "Come out or get baked. Your choice, you little rats." A wave of heat began to radiate up through the floorboards. We were trapped on the second floor of a burning house with a psychopath waiting at the only exit. I looked at the gun in my hand, then at Leo, then at the barred window. "Leo," I said calmly, "get the thick comforter from the closet. Soak it in the bathroom. Now." "What's the plan, Mom?" I cocked the revolver. "We are not going to burn to death. We're going to break through that fire. And if he gets in our way," I stared at the door, which was now warm to the touch, "I'm going to blow his head off." Heat. That was the only word to describe the master bedroom now. The air wasn't oxygen anymore. It was a searing vapor that roasted the skin. The thick oak door was hot to the touch, a sign that the flames on the other side were clawing their way in. Leo emerged from the bathroom, soaking wet. He was dragging the heavy, waterlogged comforter, which was now twice its normal weight, and leaving a trail of water on the floor. "Use this, Mom," Leo said, his voice void of panic, only sharp focus. He draped the heavy, wet blanket over my head and shoulders. "Cover your nose. Don't breathe the smoke. Stay low. Clean air is near the floor." I nodded, gripping the revolver tightly. The cold steel was a stark contrast to my sweaty palm. I had never fired a gun in my life. "Leo," I called before we moved. I knelt to his level. "If I fail, if I can't pull the trigger, you run. Don't worry about me." Leo looked at me, his small, wet hands cupping my face. "You won't fail. Picture his face when he called you a fool. Picture his face when he loosened that gas line. You're not pulling the trigger to kill. You're pulling it to live." I took a deep breath, filling my lungs with what little oxygen was left, and gave him a firm nod. We moved to the door. I shoved the vanity aside. On Leo's count of 3, I turned the lock and pushed the handle. Whoosh! Thick black smoke poured in like a monster unleashed. My eyes burned instantly, my vision blurred. I started to cough, but suppressed it by pressing the wet fabric to my face. "Down," Leo choked out. We dropped to the floor and crawled out of the room. The second-floor hallway was a small pocket of hell. The expensive runner carpet near the stairs was on fire, the flames licking up the wallpaper. The sounds of cracking wood and shattering glass were everywhere. But the scariest thing wasn't the fire, it was the silence from downstairs. Ethan wasn't screaming anymore. He was waiting, a patient hunter waiting for his prey to be smoked out of its hole. We crawled slowly towards the railing overlooking the living room. The first floor was filled with gray smoke, but the fire was concentrated around the base of the staircase and the kitchen. I peeked through the balusters. My heart hammered in my ears, louder than the roar of the fire. There, at the bottom of the stairs, Ethan stood amidst the smoke. He wasn't holding the tire iron anymore. Now, in his right hand, he held a large butcher knife from the premium knife block I'd given him for his birthday. He stood perfectly still, his eyes fixed on the top of the stairs, waiting for our silhouettes to appear. He coughed, rubbing his red, swollen eyes from the pepper spray, but he didn't move. He was blocking the only way out. "He's downstairs," I whispered to Leo. "He has a knife." "We can't go down the stairs," Leo whispered back. "He has the reach advantage. If you miss your shot, he'll be on us before you can fire again." "Then where do we go?" "The other windows are barred too." Leo scanned our surroundings. His eyes landed on the massive crystal chandelier hanging over the foyer, right behind where Ethan was standing. The chandelier's chain was anchored to a beam in the second-floor ceiling, and the access point was hidden inside a small utility closet in the hallway. "A silent move, Mom," Leo whispered, a grim light in his eyes. "We don't have to go down to fight him. We drop the ceiling on his head." I followed his gaze. The closet was only a few feet away, but it was locked. "The key is on his keychain." "No, it's not," Leo said. He pulled a small, bent piece of wire from his pocket. "I learned how to pick every lock in this house when I was 8. Without waiting for me, Leo crawled to the small closet. The smoke was getting thicker. My lungs burned. I aimed the gun downwards, keeping a bead on Ethan through the railing. My hand shook as I tried to aim for his head or chest, but the smoke made everything blurry. Click. The closet door opened. Inside, we could see the base of the massive iron chain holding the 100-pound chandelier. It was secured to a steel bolt with a large nut. "The nut is rusted," Leo hissed. "I need a tool." There were no tools. The hammer was downstairs. I looked at the gun in my hand. The grip was made of hard, solid wood. "Use this." But Leo shook his head. "No, you keep watch. If he sees me, shoot!" Leo grabbed a small brass statue from a console table in the hall and started hammering at the rusted nut. Tang! Tang! The sound of metal on metal echoed. Downstairs, Ethan looked up. Well, the little rats are redecorating before they die," he yelled, his voice hoarse. "What are you doing in there? Hiding in a closet?" Ethan started up the stairs. 1 step, 2 steps. "Leo, he's coming up," I cried in panic. "Almost there," Leo hammered with all his might. "Tang! Tang!" Ethan quickened his pace. His face was a horrific mask of minor burns, swollen eyes, and a psychotic grin. The butcher knife gleamed in the firelight. "Daddy's coming, Leo Bear," he sang in a horrifying tone. He was halfway up the stairs, only 15 feet away. I had no choice. I stood up, throwing off my wet blanket, and aimed the revolver straight at his chest. "Stop, or I'll shoot," I screamed. Ethan stopped. He looked at the gun, then laughed a dismissive, condescending laugh. "You? Shoot me?" He shook his head. Clara, you tremble just holding a kitchen knife. You think you have the guts to pull that trigger? That's my grandfather's antique. The trigger pull is 10 pounds. Your delicate little fingers will break before a bullet ever comes out." He took another step. "Now give me the gun. Stop playing games." He was bluffing, using his last trick, manipulation, and damn him, my hands were shaking violently. Doubt crept in. Could I really kill a person? "Leo, hurry!" I yelled without looking away. "It's loose!" Leo screamed at the same time. A loud crack echoed through the hall. It wasn't a gunshot. It was the sound of the steel bolt snapping. The chain holding the crystal chandelier went slack. Ethan looked up, his eyes widening as he heard the rumbling sound from above. Gravity took over. The massive chandelier plummeted. It didn't hit Ethan directly. He was too far up the stairs, but it crashed into the base of the staircase with a cataclysmic explosion of glass. Crash. Shards of sharp crystal flew everywhere like shrapnel. The impact sent a massive shock wave through the wooden staircase, which had already been weakened by the fire at its foundation. The structure couldn't take it. Ethan never finished his sentence. Crack. Craw. Rumble. The section of the staircase Ethan was standing on collapsed. The charred wood splintered, sending him plunging into the fiery pit at the bottom of the stairs. Triple ARGRG. Ethan's shriek was cut short by the sound of his body hitting the burning debris on the ground floor. I stared, frozen, at the gaping hole in the middle of the stairs. Smoke billowed up from it. "We did it," I gasped in disbelief. "Not yet," Leo said, grabbing my arm. "The stairs are gone. We're trapped on the 2nd floor, and the fire is spreading up the hall." He was right. The collapse had changed the airflow, and now flames were licking up through the hole. We couldn't go down. We couldn't go back. We were utterly isolated. Suddenly, from the far end of the hall, near the back balcony we'd never considered, came the sound of shattering glass. Crash! Then a loud, authoritative voice yelled, "Police! Don't move!" I turned, startled. Relief wasn't my first emotion. It was fear. Was this a real cop or another one of Ethan's associates? The figure that jumped through the shattered balcony door was not in a police uniform. He wore a black leather jacket, a face mask, and was holding a tactical rifle. He aimed it directly at me. "Drop the weapon, ma'am. Now. Don't shoot. She's with me. They're backup." Leo's shout cut through the tense standoff. His small voice was hoarse but filled with authority. I nearly dropped the gun in shock. The man in the jacket lowered his rifle slightly, his sharp eyes flicking from Leo to me. He held up one hand, revealing a police badge on a chain around his neck. "Ma'am, Leo sent an SOS with a real-time location to our cybercrime unit 10 minutes ago," the man said, his voice muffled by the mask. "Drop the weapon. We're here to get you out." My knees buckled. The wave of relief was so overwhelming it almost made me pass out. The antique revolver fell from my hand, thudding onto the hot floorboards. "This way, now! The ceiling is about to collapse," the officer commanded. He grabbed Leo, hoisting him up with one arm, and pulled me along with the other. We scrambled out onto the wide back balcony. The cold night air hit my face, a welcome shock after the inferno inside. Below us, our yard was a sea of flashing red and blue lights. Fire trucks, police cars, and ambulances filled the lawn. The wail of sirens mixed with the roar of the fire. "Down the emergency ladder," the officer ordered, pointing to a foldable ladder the fire department had already set up. With my remaining strength, I climbed down the metal rungs. My legs were shaky, but survival instinct kept me moving. The moment my feet touched the cool, damp grass, paramedics rushed over, wrapping me and Leo in orange thermal blankets. "Are you injured, ma'am?" a nurse asked, checking the bruise on my forehead. I just shook my head, my eyes glued to the front of my burning home. My dream house, my prison, was being consumed by flames. A crowd of neighbors had gathered behind the yellow police tape, their faces a mixture of shock and horror. "It's Mrs. Miller. She's safe." "Oh my God, what a fire. Where's her husband? Where's Mr. Miller?" That question was answered in the most horrifying way possible. From the flaming maw of the front door, a figure staggered out. It crawled at first, then forced itself to stand, dragging one leg. Ethan's expensive clothes were charred rags, clinging to his skin. The handsome face he was so proud of was now a blistered, blackened mess. He looked like a zombie rising from the grave. It was Ethan. He had survived the fall, but not without a price. "Clara!" His scream wasn't one of pain, but of pure, terrifying rage. He saw me standing by the ambulance. A mad surge of adrenaline made him ignore his injuries and the dozens of police officers surrounding him. He lurched towards me. In his hand, he still gripped the butcher knife, its blade now black with soot. "Freeze! Drop the weapon!" A dozen officers yelled in unison, aiming their guns at him. Ethan didn't care. His red, swollen eyes were locked on me. "You ruined everything. My insurance, my life. You cursed woman," he roared for all to hear. "You were supposed to die quietly. You were supposed to burn with that crippled brat." The neighbors gasped. The scene descended into chaos. Leo, who was sitting on the bumper of the ambulance, suddenly jumped down. He was no longer faking it. He walked, head held high, right through the line of police and stood in front of me, spreading his small arms to protect me. Ethan stopped dead in his tracks, frozen by the sight. His jaw dropped. The knife wavered in his hand. "You," Ethan choked out. "You can walk?" Leo looked at his father, his chin held high. There was no fear in his eyes, only profound disgust. "I can walk, Dad," Leo said, his voice clear and ringing, carrying over the sirens. "I can run, I can talk, and I can record all of your murder plots." Leo held up his tablet. Its screen was bright, wirelessly connected to the speakers of the cybercrime unit's van parked nearby, a trick Leo must have coordinated in his SOS message. The recording of Ethan and Jessica's conversation boomed across the entire neighborhood. "Clara is naive. She won't suspect a thing, even if she doesn't die from the gas. We cash the insurance, get married in Europe. Goodbye, poverty." Everyone fell silent. A chilling hush fell over the yard. The neighbors' faces turned from sympathy to revulsion. Ethan stumbled back, his face ashen beneath the burns. His secret was laid bare for the world to see. He wasn't a respected architect anymore. He was a monster. He looked at me, his eyes pleading for the first time. "Clara, honey, that was just a joke." I stepped past Leo and looked directly into the eyes of the man I once loved. "Don't call me honey," I said, my voice quiet but as sharp as a blade. "The fool you married died in that fire. The woman standing here is the witness who will make sure you rot in prison for the rest of your life." "No, no," Ethan screamed. He raised the knife one last time, lunging for a final, suicidal attack. Bang! A police warning shot fired into the air, but it was drowned out by a much larger explosion. Boom! The main gas line in the kitchen, the source of it all, finally succumbed to the heat. A massive explosion rocked the back of the house. The shockwave slammed into Ethan's back, throwing him face down into the mud at a police officer's feet. The remaining windows shattered. The roof collapsed in on itself, sending a pillar of fire shooting into the night sky. The house was gone. Ethan was apprehended, a police boot on his back as cold steel handcuffs were snapped onto his blistered wrists. I stood and watched as my husband was dragged away like an animal. He looked back at me one last time, his gaze empty, broken, and utterly defeated. I didn't look away. A small hand took mine. I looked down. Leo was giving me a small, tired smile, the first genuine smile I had ever seen on his face. "It's over, Mom," he whispered. I hugged his small body tightly under a rain of ash. "Yes, sweetie, it's over." But as my eyes scanned the crowd, my gaze locked onto a red sedan parked down the street. The window was slightly open. I could just make out a woman in sunglasses staring at us, her face tense, one hand resting on her pregnant belly. Jessica. She saw everything. When our eyes met, she quickly rolled up the window and sped away. I narrowed my eyes. Ethan's karma had been delivered. But for her, our business wasn't finished. 6 months later, the sound of the judge's gavel was the most beautiful music I had ever heard. Finds the defendant, Ethan Miller, guilty on all counts of attempted murder, insurance fraud, and arson. This court sentences him to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The courtroom erupted. Camera flashes went off like lightning, all aimed at the man slumped in the defendant's chair. Ethan no longer looked like the handsome prince who had charmed me. The right side of his face was a permanent landscape of red, scarred tissue, an eternal souvenir from the fire he started. He now walked with a permanent limp from the fall. The painful irony was not lost on me. He had faked his son's paralysis, and now God had given him a real disability. He turned his head slowly, his dull, defeated eyes meeting mine. I held his gaze, not with hatred, but with a cold emptiness. He was just a stranger now. Beside me, Leo sat tall in a sharp little suit. His feet were planted firmly on the floor. He squeezed my hand as the bailiffs began to lead his father away. As he passed us, Ethan paused. "Clara," his voice was a broken rasp. "Take care of Leo." I offered a tiny, merciless smile. I was always going to. I'm his mother, his real mother, not just some fool you married. Ethan bowed his head as he was pulled away towards the hell he had built for himself. As we walked into the courthouse lobby, the crowd of reporters parted. Coming from the other direction, 2 female officers were escorting a pregnant woman in an orange jumpsuit. It was Jessica. Her digital trail had been her undoing. She was charged as an accomplice to attempted murder. Her accounts were frozen, her luxury condo seized. We stopped, face to face. She looked up, all her arrogance gone. She looked from her swollen belly to my face, her expression pleading. "Mrs. Miller," she sobbed, "please, help me. Ethan made me do it. This baby is innocent. Please, retract your testimony." I looked her up and down. The old Clara might have felt pity, but I remembered her laughing in those text messages. I remembered her waiting for the news of my death. I leaned in close, whispering so only she could hear. "The baby is innocent, Jessica, but its mother is a greedy monster. Enjoy your pregnancy in prison. And don't worry, karma never gets the wrong address. Your ticket to Paris may have expired, but I'm sure there's a permanent seat for you on a prison bus." Jessica collapsed into hysterics as the officers dragged her away. I straightened my purse, took Leo's hand, and walked out into the warm afternoon sun. A month later, a cool evening breeze blew across the patio of our new home. It wasn't a mansion, but a cozy, single-story house in a quiet suburb. I bought it with the last of my own savings from before I was married. In the front yard, Leo was chasing a golden retriever puppy we'd just adopted. His laughter was pure and alive. Seeing him run and jump still brought tears to my eyes. "Mom, look!" he yelled, waving. "Bonnie can catch the ball." "That's great, sweetie," I called back, giving him a thumbs up. He ran over to me and sat on the bench, his face flushed. "What are we celebrating tonight?" I picked up a large manila envelope from the table. Inside was a new birth certificate and a court decree for adoption and custody. Leo's last name was no longer Miller. He now had a new name we'd chosen together, my name. "This," I said, showing him the paper. "As of today, you are officially and legally my son. No step, no other guardians, just us." Leo read his new name. His lip trembled. The boy genius who could hack security systems and build weapons was suddenly just a little boy. He threw his arms around me, hugging me so tight I could barely breathe. Thank you, Mom. He sobbed into my shoulder. Thank you for not dying that day. I stroked his hair. I should be thanking you, sweetie, I whispered. You're the one who saved me. You woke me up. My phone on the table buzzed. A news alert. Inmate Ethan Miller found dead in cell. Apparent suicide. I stared at the headline. Dika saw my expression and read the screen. Silence. I took a long breath, then slowly turned the phone face down. No tears, no sadness. Just the final closing of a very dark book. Come on inside, Leo, I said, standing and holding out my hand. Bonnie's hungry, and I'm making your favorite chicken soup. Don't forget to lock the gate. Leo looked at me, then broke into a wide smile. He took my hand. You got it, Mom, and I promise there will be no more broken locks in this house. We walked into our warm, bright home, closing the door on a dark past and stepping into a new life that was truly, finally ours.